Hello and welcome, Ganesh. I'm so happy to have you here today and share space with you.
Thank you, Terry. It's a pleasure to meet you and to speak with you. Thanks for having me.
So you have started your Buteyko training. You've done level 1 and into level 2, correct?
That's right. I'm beginning level 3A right now. Yeah.
Perfect. So could you start out by sharing who you are, where you're from, a little bit about what you're up to these days?
Okay. Well, my name is Ganesh Om. I live in Cary, North Carolina. And let's see, the most interesting thing about me is that I have a wonderful guru named Sri Dharma Mitra, and he lives in New York and has been teaching yoga there for over 50 years. It was from him that I was really fortunate to learn about yogic breathing techniques and pranayama, control of the breath, and the amazing benefits that these techniques have, not just for health and um, improving quality of life, but for spiritual development too. And it was in 2004 when I started studying with him, and have been practicing ever since, trying to improve myself and teaching and sharing these techniques with others. And it was this interest in breathing techniques that I've always had that brought me through research to the Buteyko method and the work of Dr. Konstantin Buteyko, which I felt immediately was very profound because from reading just a little bit about Dr. Buteyko's work, I felt that he had discovered through scientific research and divine inspiration what the ancient yogis had discovered thousands of years ago about the secrets behind how we as humans are meant to breathe and the different purposes that breathing holds for human development, not just physically for health and mental well-being, but for spiritual growth and development too. And I found it fascinating that through research, through modern research, Dr. Buteyko was able to substantiate and explain in a different way the discoveries of the ancient rishis. It's said in the yoga system that every being is born with a certain number of breaths. And when these breaths run out, the soul leaves the body. And this, to me, is corroborated by Dr. Buteyko's method and work because we see that the more health improves, the control pause, the duration of time which one can hold their breath after a gentle exhalation, which is normally quite unpleasant, even just for a few seconds for most people. This number of seconds increases and increases very steadily as the health improves. And as a result, the breath slows, and normal breathing, I learned, really does mean the breath is reduced, and one breath would occur over a longer and longer period of time. And this, in effect, is yogic breathing. According to the ancient scriptures, like the Shiva Samhita and others, breath should be done through the nose, with the tongue resting on the roof of the mouth behind the teeth, as in for meditation. And that the breath, healthy breathing naturally takes a long time and very little effort. So even though I've been working on pranayama for more than 15 years, I still find lots of room for improvement in my own practice. Even just breathing in and out through both nostrils with no fancy techniques that the yoga system offers, even just this simple act is extremely profound, and one can go very deep into something that's very simple. And that's just a little bit to start, but I see a lot of unity between the ancient science of yoga, which is perfect and needs no alteration, and Dr. Buteyko's work that I think is helping us as members of modern civilization develop the ability to experience and uncover some of the secrets and benefits of ancient practices like yoga.
There are a lot of people that come to Buteyko for a variety of reasons. And a lot of times it could be health concerns such as asthma and whatnot. And I'm hearing that you have come to this practice for personal and spiritual development. And we don't often talk a lot about that. Would you like to expand a little bit further on that?
Sure. So from my own practice and the instruction I've been fortunate to receive, I feel like the breathing is an entry point to whatever way an individual would want to grow. Some people want to grow physically and improve their health or achieve physical improvements like physical movements and related things. And the breathing can help with that. Some people want to grow spiritually, learn to meditate and find peace, even peace within. And I think the breathing helps with that as well. For me personally, I felt like I've wanted to continue my spiritual path in yoga. And part of that would involve teaching and working with others who are sick or ailing, in addition to those who want to grow spiritually. Maybe someone wants to work in all areas. So for me, in my spiritual progress, I've always found breathing to be control of the breath to be extremely important. And sharing with others as well is a big part of that. In my own practice, I feel like my breathing practices have always been a main part of and a favorite part of my spiritual practices. You know, I try to meditate every day and do postures and breathing techniques, and most importantly, to be a nice person and kind to others and treat others with compassion and love. Although I find I break the ethical rules every day. It's hard to keep them absolutely perfectly, but just trying to is the foundation. And I remember my own guru would always say, you cannot practice the breathing exercises unless you're a nice person. And I think that what he meant by this was, if you're not a nice person, your breath will only settle to a certain degree. If you really want the breath to become under your control, qualities like love and compassion extended towards others, not just people, but all beings, it does something to your internal state, to your mind, when you love others, even those that might not love you. And this automatically reduces the breathing. You know, I found from working with Jesse Steinberg, my wonderful breathing instructor through this training, and who is someone I now consider a spiritual brother and a great friend as well, although he knows enough to remain my teacher. I feel that from working with him, I've seen how just awareness of the physical diaphragm relaxing automatically reduces the breathing. And just bringing the awareness up a little bit higher to the level of the mind and relaxing the mind and finding a little bit more stillness there, that automatically reduced the breathing even more without trying. But how could you relax your mind if you were holding on to negative thoughts about other people? How far could someone really go? How much inner peace could we really find? And it was remarkable to me to find that Dr. Buteyko would ask prospective patients who came to him, do you believe in God? No? Work with my assistant. Do you believe in God? Yes? Then I'll take you. And that despite all of his research, the foundation of his approach and his knowledge seemed to me to be very spiritual, but very rooted in some kind of higher power. I never heard him speak about a specific name and form of God or of divinity, but there seemed to be a big acknowledgement that there's a greater intelligence than our personal selves. that is more powerful than we are, and that surrendering to this aspect and working in harmony with this force would naturally help us in our quest for health and for improved breathing. And I think that's the mission of yogis in modern times that come from India in the last 100 or 200 years to this country, is to help improve the health of America, because our society is so busy and materially oriented. It sometimes is difficult to know where to look for peace. And by focusing on your breath, you naturally look inward a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And that's where real happiness comes from.
I think that's really beautifully stated. There's definitely no tension in kindness. How do you practice being more kind? What does that look like for you on a daily basis?
It's an ongoing process, and I never feel like I reach it. But I try to see myself in other people and imagine that I'm them, like as if I'm putting myself in the other person or even the animal, and to imagine what it feels like to be them. What's their experience like? How would I talk to them, or how would I treat them, with the understanding that I could perceive the effects of my thoughts or actions towards them. And if you can stop and think like that, even just for a second, it's hard to maintain it, but even just for a second, it can make you pause and step back, especially if someone gets on your nerves. Your mask is crooked with all this COVID stuff going on, right? Why aren't you wearing a mask? Well, we're outside. Well, that's not okay with me, but understand, well, they're suffering, they're scared, they're worried, not that they're attacking you, and the thing to do is to react, but I found I work in customer service because I work at Trader Joe's. So we interact with the public a lot. And it's always easier to take a more compassionate approach to somebody, even if they're unkind, if you stop and take a breath through your nose. And then you just feel this pause on the mental process of reacting. But it's never, I don't feel like it's ever a perfect process. I feel like it's an ongoing practice, and I don't feel that I achieve it all the time. It's a question of degree.
Mm-hmm. So there's some contradictions between, let's say, yoga breathing and Buteyko breathing. And a lot of people get tripped up here because they'll go into a yoga class and there's a lot of deep breathing. And then Buteyko is more soft, kind, gentle breathing. What are your thoughts? Can you dive into that a little bit? I would love your perspective on that.
Yeah, so, I mentioned my teacher, my guru earlier, and he is always my example. I would always observe him to see what is the thing to do, or how should I try to be, and to try to copy what he did. His breathing was always, even at the age of 81 right now, he's in an amazing state of health and can do amazing postures even at his age. You would never know his age from watching him. But if you watch him breathe, his breathing is almost imperceptible. Unless he's doing a specific technique to really fill everything, to expand the chest at the end of the breath, which is just a specialized technique. His resting breathing is almost imperceptible, and it's very slow. It's through the nose. And his breathing during poses, even difficult poses, is very calm and under control, noiseless, according to what the ancient scriptures describe that the breath should be like. And I think that I didn't look at other yogic sources, like other more modern forms of yoga, that talk about heavy breathing or deep breathing or expelling all of the CO2 out of your body because it's toxic. Of course, it's really not toxic. You need it to survive. Because I know that his roots are in the ancient and traditional practices of yoga that he learned from his guru, Swami Kailashananda from Rishikesh in India. So I feel that he was embodying and still is embodying the ancient secrets of how the divine yogic techniques should be done. And that when I say I have found there to be a harmony between Dr. Buteyko's work and the yogic science, that it's this aspect and representation of the yogic science that is where I see the connection. It's a wonderful thing that yoga is everywhere in our culture right now. And I am aware that there are many who emphasize the deep and the heavy breathing. And I would never want to say that this isn't right or this is wrong or this is incorrect. But I think it's just a different approach to the breathing. And I was never instructed in that way. So what always resonated with me the most from the yogic practices and from reading about Dr. Buteyko's work was the approach that I just described, that you spoke of as well. And to be honest with you, for me personally, this is the greatest challenge because it's hard to control your breath in that way. And if you're really wrapped up in the results of your practice, it might be frustrating because it takes a long time to change your breathing. And because it's the most unconscious action, I believe it's the most unconscious action in the body to change the fundamental breathing pattern in the brain. So it takes time and it takes patience and it takes a willingness to surrender to the process and let the act of practicing sort of be your practice and not to worry about the results. And it's much easier to breathe deeply and to look for immediate results. And I've done that in my own practice in trying to slow down and find a little bit more stillness in my own breath. But, I'm still practicing, I'm still trying. And I just felt that this way was the way for me to try, and that it made sense because it reconciled the ancient teachings I've heard of with what we need in our society to balance out this busy modern lifestyle with all the electronics, which clearly have a purpose, being that I wouldn't be able to speak with you today without them.
Right. And I think that, yes, the breathing is kind of this unconscious thing that happens, but then if we have built our lives on a pattern of unhealthy breathing, we've really got to focus on literally rewiring those neural pathways to the brain to create a new pattern with our breath. And I think that can be very difficult, especially for people who have had a lifetime of unhealthy breathing. And so that speaks to me when you say it is a practice, and you're saying you still show up and you still come to the mat and meet yourself where you're at every single day, knowing that it's a journey. Do you, I would imagine, and this is a pretty intimate question, so if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But I would imagine when you're in your practice and you are seeking personal development or spiritual development, there's some deep healing that happens along the way. Is there anything that you would like to share about any healing that you have found for yourself along the way?
Yes. So specifically with regard to this training program, one thing that I've found with the Buteyko approach, which is in harmony with the ancient approach of following the breath, I started to find that different traumas or negative experiences or negative ideas that I have in my head on a deep level that's really not there on a conscious level, these things started to unearth themselves and sort of come up. If I was breathing heavier, this would not have happened. I tried this before. I practiced the Buteyko method from some books, and without the supervision, I was able to do the techniques, but breathing a little bit more fully or willfully than really is described in the techniques. And this process of old mental patterns coming up or old traumas coming up and sort of healing as they were brought to the surface and released did not happen. And it's not pleasant when these things happen, but there's a saying, better out than in. And, I really want to change and evolve and grow. And I don't want to be the same next year or in 5 years or 10 years as I am now. And I would rather have some unpleasantness at this time and have more growth later, So to me, it's worth it to suffer a little bit in the here and now. But overall, it's still pretty pleasant and it's not that bad. So don't be deterred from embarking on this journey. If you're watching this, it's really an amazing process, and your teacher will help you to go at the right speed for you. And some people want to suffer more in the beginning and go faster, and some people want to go at a pace that's more comfortable, but it'll just unfold in the right way. So don't worry about that. But for me, a lot of the sort of like cleansing reactions that would arise had to do and still have to do with certain ideas or viewpoints about myself that would be like unearthed and sort of exposed. But while that might not be unpleasant, when something comes up, you can look at it and realize that that's not really who you are. That's not the essence of who you are. That's something born of the mind or mental experience, and that it can heal. And, the breathing practices really do heal on this subtle level. But we have to give ourselves the time and the space, and it takes a lot of patience and perseverance. But it's a lot of depth into one thing that's very simple, like meditation. That's why meditation is so hard, right? Because you just have to concentrate on one thing. Well, it sounds easy, but it's not, So for me, that was one thing that I learned and became aware of, that hadn't happened to me yet on quite that level, where I really saw things coming up from within that I wanted to change or release, and to witness that process, So for me, that was profound, and it still is profound, especially when you can tell that after that experience might pass, that you really do feel lighter, or that you really do feel that a certain region of your body doesn't have a blockage in the way it once did, And I think it's important to be open to these things happening. This is not really necessarily the purpose. The purpose might be to improve your health, or the purpose might be to know who you are more fully and spiritually. But different people have different experiences that are affirming to them along the way. This was just how some of them unfolded for me during this training.
Since everything's connected, right? So the mind, body, and I hear you show up for a deeper connection to self, personal development, advancing your spiritual practice. But definitely it's not all mind, emotion, spirit. There's a physical component since it's all connected. And you did just mention a couple physical components. Can you expand a little bit on that, on as far as what physical experiences you did have through your training?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've learned that it's true that the brain is designed to store unprocessed experiences in our physical bodies. It's actually a scientific fact, and it's an amazing feature of our machine. So when I spoke of emotions or ideas sort of being unearthed unconsciously from focusing on my breathing, I have noticed um, physical improvement in how I move and how it feels to move, and in maybe blockages of energy being eliminated or improved as a result of the breathing practice as well, not only development in mental patterns. And I feel that I've also observed the more I grow into relaxation of the diaphragm and control of the breathing, that provides physical support for the body. So moving improves. If your diaphragm is doing its job, part of its job is stabilizing the physical body. So there are other muscles that can finally relax, because when the diaphragm's not doing its proper job, different muscles in the body tighten, especially around the spine and near the pelvis, sometimes even in the neck and throat, upper back, to tighten because the diaphragm is not doing its job. So the body wants to find stability. But this is a survival mechanism. It's not meant that you would stay here for a prolonged period of time. So taking over the job of structural support, the primary structural support of the body, along with the pelvic floor and the transversus abdominis, the deep abdominal muscles, naturally makes the body relax. And then if you have goals in your sport or goals in movement, you can more easily achieve them. You know, I like to do movements from the original strength system, and this is based on the childhood development sequence. It's sort of like the physical building blocks of how we learn to walk, and also the building blocks of yogic postures in a very simple form. And so one of them is crawling, and you can, I've found that crawling on the hands and feet develops a lot of physical strength and a lot of cardiovascular health. But for some reason that's almost mysterious, moving in these different ways makes the breath very calm if you're breathing through your nose. And it's almost like our body is really made to breathe this way. Because if you start to crawl and rock and roll the way a baby would, you find that the breathing naturally finds this quiet place that's similar to the description of Buteyko breathing. And it's almost counterintuitive that we should have to work hard on our breath or breathe hard while we're exercising. But actually, the opposite is true.
So you did your training with Jesse and have continued your training with Jesse. Is there anything that you would like to share with us with your experience as you were doing, whether it was level 1 or level 2, working with Jesse? Any experiences you'd like to share?
Yeah. So, I had my consultation with Sasha before the training began, and it was Sasha and her work that made me feel I could really be able to work with sick people if I took this training. I can see how Sasha knows the right approach and has really received the Buteyko training from its source, and that she's also a very spiritual person. So she knows the purpose of breathing. And I imagined studying with Sasha. You know, I didn't know there were other wonderful Buteyko teachers in the Breathing Center. So when during our consultation, she said, I'm going to put you with Jessie. Jessie's a very spiritual person, and I think you two will really have a connection and be great. So I thought, well, I came here for Sasha, but I trust her, so this will be good. But I didn't know what to expect. And right away when I met Jessie, I knew she was right. This is perfect. Like, he's the perfect person for me to be working with. The first thing I noticed about him was that when I had a question about my personal experience and what I was going through at that time in the training, was that he didn't get information for the answer from books or because it was something he was taught. He always would close his eyes or would look off to the side, and I could tell he was going inward to find what the answer was. Like, he was reading my energy and using his intuition to discern what the right thing to say would be. And he was always right. And he always knew the right thing to say. I'm sure he knew 10 or 20 answers for every question that I asked. But my situation was unique, as every student is. And he always picked the right one because he was using his higher faculties. And since I noticed that about him right away, I thought, wow, this is my kind of guy. And you know, the training was just great, and it was very much custom made for me. You know, he knew that I have a guru, and I wasn't looking for a spiritual master to find and to learn the truth from. What I found in him was someone who knew enough to be my teacher, but he met me as a friend and a colleague and a brother. And that was the perfect nature of our relationship for me to learn it. And yeah, he said that he had other students, and no students were the same. Some people needed this kind of practice. Some people needed that kind. Some people needed to practice all day long or wanted to practice all day long. And some people needed just 10 minutes of formal training in practice every day and just to watch their breath for the rest of the day. And it really showed me that the teacher's job is to match the content to the student's needs. And it's not important of how it looks, it's important that the student's getting what they need. So on all those levels, you know, my experience with Jessie was wonderful.
So yeah, Jesse is fantastic. I don't think I've ever heard an unkind word about Jesse. His energy is just fabulous. So I am a big fan of aha moments. Those moments are delicious. So in your training, whether it was some type of tip or trick to help you figure a part of your practice out, or if it was a personal breakthrough, what were can you share an aha moment that you might have had throughout your training with him?
Yeah, so I think there were two that come to mind right away. I think we had a lot of those, but two stand out to me. The first one, I think, was in our first session, where, like, he only really watched me breathe like one time, which I don't know, that might sound strange or unusual, but I think it probably only needed to happen that one time, because once he told me a couple things and watched me breathe. And it was when I noticed, as I relaxed my diaphragm and the navel moved back in towards the spine, I felt a vacuum, like almost like I was wearing a weight belt, like around my waist. And it felt supportive even after the exhalation, but at the same time, there wasn't very much work involved at all in the exhalation. and I had not quite perceived that vacuum before. I actually there's a technique in yoga called the belly lift or Uddiyana Bandha, where you breathe all the air out of the lungs, which is not what is done in Buteyko breathing or normal breathing. And because there's a deficit of air in the lungs, the belly moves in drastically towards the spine, and you can lift the whole abdominal viscera up, and it looks like you're extremely skinny and have no waist. But it's because of the vacuum effect, because the atmospheric pressure outside the body is greater than what's in the lungs at that moment. And I felt a small piece of that technique in the normal breathing, just a small piece, but having that feeling of the vacuum, feeling like there was a belt around me, but internally, was part of understanding what the normal breathing was. And it almost happens like a reflex, like without effort, but there's that support after the inhalation or the exhalation. And I think that after that, he said, the process has been activated and you just need to keep breathing now. And, you know, do some practice, but just watch your breathing during the day.
How'd you feel when he said that?
I thought that I was really excited because I felt inside when I tried it that I was further along to mastering the breath. And I also felt like it's that easy. Like, shouldn't it be harder? Don't you want to watch me breathe again? Don't we need to do this? Don't we need to do that? And he said, no, just keep doing that. The process has been activated. And after that time, I would watch my breath during the entire day. I didn't actually have a lot of time or a lot of capacity for seated formal practice, although I have done very large amounts of seated formal practice in the past. At this time in my life, it just doesn't seem to work. But I found that having awareness of my breath during the entire workday was really a practice, and I saw benefits to it from this breathing approach that I was unable to see before from trying to observe and watch my breath. And I did feel like this is more like how my guru breathes. Like, I feel like I really am becoming better at copying him, and that's what I wanted. And it really changed the workday for me. And to be honest with you, the struggle sort of was and is, shouldn't I be doing more? Like, really surrendering to the idea that if you're aware of this all day long, how much more seated practice do you really need? You know, or can you really take, you know, if your nerves or if everything's already stimulated and the process is unfolding. So I really do enjoy seated practices and formal practice, but it's good. It's made me become aware of and look at attachment to them and trying to make practice every moment.
Yeah, I'm hearing you say you slid into the arrival of that breakthrough, and then I'm hearing you talk about that feeling. And anybody who has those breakthroughs knows what you're talking about, because it's almost like you just slide right in and then you're there, and it's that second guessing of like, wait, what? I'm here? And then there's the smoothness while you're there. So do you have anything else you would like to share with people, since you have embarked on your journey through several trainings, and then you're going on to become a practitioner yourself, and you've got a lot of roots now here in this Buteyko arena? Anything you'd like to share with people who are thinking about taking the level 1 training?
Yeah, I would recommend it for very strongly for anybody, no matter what your goals are, working with your breathing will improve your life. Um, I've seen this in my own life on really deep levels in many different ways. Anytime I've had a positive life change or a big life change, or on any level, physically, mentally, spiritually, and I'm still growing. Not to say that I've finished this process at all. I can always trace it back to working on my breathing. Any kind of growth spurt or change in your life, your breath is the most subtle thing about you. And because of that, it's the most powerful thing about you. And most of us don't know how to use our breath properly. But if you do, working with your breathing in this way that's offered here during the Buteyko trainings at the Breathing Center, um, this can help you succeed in any area of your life that you want success in. The breath is sort of like a missing link or a mystery. It's not to say that the doctors don't have something to offer, or that psychologists don't have something to offer, or that your yoga teacher doesn't have something to offer. Experts in their field sometimes really understand the breath. And those that do understand the breath, if you watch and observe them, tend to have more knowledge and success in what they're doing, whether it's an elite athlete or somebody who's on a spiritual path. It's not to say that the purpose of spirituality is to be able to hold your breath for a long time. That in and of itself may not mean someone is qualified. But if you want to improve your life, the secrets behind your breath are going to help get you there. And whatever your goals are, the breath is so universal and unique to our wonderful, beautiful design, divinely inspired design as human beings, that working with your breathing and mastering your breathing will help you on the most base levels of health and bodily function, and carry you higher into more love and compassion and knowing why you're the way you are and understanding who you really are, which is also found behind the breath. So I think it's a special and rare opportunity to be making this choice. And I would encourage everybody to take the chance and do it. It's only 2 months and it's only some practice each day, whether it's a few minutes or a few hours, and you're worth it. And who knows what you'll uncover, but it will be something really profound and powerful.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. So I've enjoyed sharing space with you today. You are definitely a gift to this world, and I appreciate you and I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences and being honest and open with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity to meet you and speak to you and share. And I hope to stay in touch, and I'm looking forward to going deeper into the breath and going deeper within with all of you. Thank you, Terry.